Hello everyone, welcome to my next video. This video will be going over, since I'm already in a MAR and was planning on heading back to nullsec, it's going to go over kind of the method in which we should travel to our nullsec space. So I'm just going to demonstrate how I do it, kind of give you a rundown of what you should, the best practices for traveling to and from HiSec out of our nullsec space. And hopefully in this method it will kind of give some of you a better idea of how you can more safely travel and prevent losses when you're trying to jump from HiSec to lowsec or nullsec, and avoiding which systems, kind of working out the inefficiencies or best practices to help your movement go smoothly, right? So I just got an extra ratting at Ishtar at Amar. I'm going to go ahead and get myself going and head to nullsec space, right? So what do you do at first? Well, initially what you should do is kind of give yourself a good setup, give yourself a good idea of what you're getting yourself into. Now, that can have a combination of different things, right? So first, obviously, like all things, you want to set your route. But when you do that, you need to pay attention to something very specific. So I'm going to go ahead and just, without really thinking about it, go to my assets. I want to go to H9 as my destination. So I just set the location to H9, right? When you do that, you can see on my route, if you're not really paying attention, this can really sometimes mess you up, that based on my route settings, I have prefer shorter on. There's obviously prefer safer, less secure, all those settings, but when I have it set to prefer shorter, it's not going to bring me to where it should, right? You can see that it's going to bring me to some locations where it's going to go through, instead of our normal route, which is the one I recommend in my other nullsec videos, it's going to bring us to Misaba, which is the home base of one of our biggest adversaries at this point in time. And when you're not paying attention, when you're just like, you know what, let me get from Amar to H9 or vice versa, and you're not thinking or focusing on your route, trying to travel through there will likely very often get you killed, because those guys in that system are looking to kill us specifically. So instead of doing this, what I'd recommend is, and on the second note, even if you say prefer safer, it's going to still bring you through Misaba. It's going to bring you through these systems, Mamit, that are very, very dangerous for us specifically trying to get into nullsec. So, which is the right way to go, right? Well, the first thing I would heavily recommend is you obviously keep it prefer shorter, because the less time and space, the better. Unless for very specific reasons you want to avoid certain, systems that may have gate campers. But we want to, instead of just going straight to our final destination, we want to bring us to the safest point in which we can jump in from HiSec to nullsec, and that would be DTOL. So I'm just going to type in DTOL, search it, and then set that as my destination, and then from there I can make an additional waypoint to the final destination in nullsec. I'm going to set DTOL as my destination. I'm going to go to my assets and set H9 as a waypoint, and it's going to let me first go to DTOL, and then from there take the more safe route that is recommended for our group to come out to nullsec, then just automatically try to go to H9 in the quickest way possible. Okay? And you can see here it'll bring me to DTOL, and then we'll go through the normal process of jumping through all of our jump gates and everything that we need to get to home base. Now, what else do we need to consider here? Well, first off, when you open your route settings, especially if you're new to this, especially if this is something that you don't, haven't done yet or are about to do, you want to make sure that you have checked off include jump gates in route. If you don't have this checked off, what it'll show is a very strange situation where it say, okay, it wants you to go to DTOL, but then it's going to still bring you back through Misaba through this secondary method, because that is the shortest route. That may technically be the safest route, even though it's not. So exactly what I expected. But we have jump gates. We have the opportunity to take advantage of our allies' infrastructure to help us get to our location safely. So you want to make sure this is checked off, and you want to make sure that the route to this location is relatively safe. So there's multiple ways to do this. Number one being, you can just ask an intel. I can go ahead in here and say, because the system that we know from high sec to low sec is from DTAL into KBP7, right? So we want to just come into Intel and type in KBP7 clear question mark, and sometimes, half the time, you will likely get a response. Sometimes you won't, unfortunate. But worst case scenario, you can ask an Intel. Someone will get back to you eventually as you're traveling towards DTAL. Maybe in that time frame, someone will answer. You can also go into your corp or fleet chats and ask, "Hey, is KBB clear?" And you could even go to the point where could someone scout for you? Could someone escort you where necessary, right? If you don't have an alt, if you don't have a secondary account that can do this, you can ask someone, "Hey, I'm bringing something valuable from high sec to null. Could I get an escort out here and check every system ahead of me while I move," right? So absolutely set yourself up to do that. You could also go into Discord and ask verbally to people, and that's a much better way to get a response than prior to that. But you want to make sure you do that. You want to make sure that you see your activity on Intel. You can see in 2V there's some neutral, so I have to be aware that there's a neutral in my pathway. I'm going towards, I have to pass through 2V to get to H9, right? So I'm seeing that there is enemy activity. That's something that you need to keep eyes on and be aware of when you're traveling for any instance, even red intel or other movements around Providence. You want to check your intel and see what's going on. There was some guy a little while ago, a couple minutes ago, in KVP7, some neutral, so I have to be careful when I travel through there, right? Finally, another option that one of my court mates, he's very, very helpful guy. Always reach out to him, Balwer Odin. He suggested this third-party application called Eve Gate Camp Check. So if you go ahead and take a look at this, 1 second, transition. There you go. So Eve Gate Camp Check. This is a useful application. Here's the URL where you can set up your travel. This will be really useful for hauling. I'm going to go through this as well in my hauling video in the future. But basically, you can check your route, make sure there's nothing specifically, alarming going on. So I can say from my start location in Amar to the waypoint DTAL, just to make sure nothing's going on there. Or, and you can tack on there to H9, because that's the route that we're going to be taking, right? You can say avoid these systems. You can, like your route settings up here, you can say shortest, secure, or unsecure, and then you can check. And what's going to happen is going to bring a drop-down list. It's going to show you any specific activity. So you can see here, domain, all the way from Amar to Muta, no kills, nothing going, no kills at gates. But in Camilla, there's 3 kills at the Cormonan gate. So you want to be careful. Thankfully, we're not going to Cormonan. This one, something to keep in mind, this doesn't show you your jump gate routes. So it's going to say, oh, let's go through Misaba instead, like it would normally if you just automatically focus that direction. But you can see kind of an indication of where there could be recent activity. If you went from Misaba to R3, you can see there's 4 kills at the Misaba gate. So if you didn't check this beforehand and you went that route, it's likely when you jump into R3 from Misaba, you would get gate camp killed, because there's dictors, interdictors, and there's 4, who knows how many people. There's a Z kill board that we could take a look at to see what's going on there. So this website is a really, really useful website, especially for hauling through high sec and seeing where heavy activity through those low sec systems, Amazon, and all the other ones that are really, really infamous for suicide gangs. Use this to check your route before you're moving anything particularly expensive, right? So this is giving me a clear idea that generally up to DTAL, there's nothing really going on. We're not going to be going through Camella, I don't think. We're going to be going a different route, right? So generally it'll be totally fine, and we don't have to worry about that, right? So that's just a really useful thing to consider when you're taking your route. Another thing to consider, and this is what I have set up, is having an alt in KVP7, because from DTAL to nullsec, that is a transition in which people try to take advantage of the change in security and kill you from high sec to null sec. So I have an alt. I have an alt that I use for industry and other stuff and hauling and etc. And he is stationed in KBP7 right now. I have him tethered up to one of our friendly stations in KBP7. And you can see on grid, I have kind of a view of not only our Ansiplex jump gate that we will be taking, but the view of the DTAL gate. And you can see I already have a good view that there's no enemies here, there's no gate camps, there's no enemies or neutrals in the system itself. So I have a very, very, very safe situation here to when I jump in from DTAL that I'll be able to get to that jump gate here and have no problems, right? So I'm going to be using this as an alt to keep an eye on things, and from there I can escort myself with my alt per system to kind of check every system, make sure there's no neutrals there, and that nothing's going to catch me by surprise, right? So that's kind of the method I'll be going through to confirm everything and make sure I'm moving safely to my destination. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and undock, and in one of my other videos I showed insta docking and insta undocking, so I'm going to go ahead and use those because I have an Ishtar. I don't think anyone's going to really focus and kill me off the bat because it's an Ishtar, but you know, you want to make sure you get out safely. So I'm going to undock. I'm going to immediately insta undock and warp. Okay, and I went ahead and hopefully warped. There we go. Lagging a little bit, but yeah, I warped out safely. I'm 300 kilometers away. This trade hub camper, he's not going to kill me because I already warped away. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and follow my route. So you go ahead and start warping. Okay. And generally, like basic rules when it comes to obviously warping around and doing things, I'm going to be demonstrating some of those critical practices that I do in nullsec. It doesn't really apply as much to highsec, but it's still very useful under certain circumstances. Obviously, when I'm going through highsec, you want to kind of keep an eye on what's going on gate. I'm going to demonstrate my typical practice for whenever I jump into a new system. I'm going to, under certain circumstances, jump to a safe and then jump from the safe to the next gate just to make sure that I'm coming in at a different angle that isn't representative of anything that could be predictable, like someone trying to set up a drag bubble or keep an eye on me, right? So I'm immediately warped into this next station. I have on my jump cloak timer 40 seconds. And I'm just going to take a look around at what's going on. Right now I have a friendly Helios, no other people on the gate camp, so at this point I can just go ahead and say, let's warp to the next system. I'm not particularly scared of anything in this system. I'm friendly with the stations. Generally, people are not setting up any specific gate camps, so just keep on moving, right? And I'm just constantly going to be checking intel. I'm constantly going to be checking local. I'm constantly going to be checking my grid and kind of making sure that nothing is too surprising, right? So, and all the while I can go ahead and check what's going on in KVP. You can see there's still nothing going on here. The DTAL gate is clear. My allies are chilling nearby, and I'm tethered up, so my alt is for the most part safe. There may be an instance where if I'm not paying attention, someone will try to bump my capsule off of the station, but that'll take a long time. If I'm really not paying attention, maybe they'll kill me, but it shouldn't happen. So now I'm in the next system. I'm looking around. I'm looking at gate. We have just a slasher. I don't think he's going to be doing anything. He's probably AFK. So I'm just going to move on to the next place. And something to consider, and I'll do this a little bit more when I'm actually in nullsec, is your immediate surroundings when you're cloaked, and potential strategies to help yourself warp out of a dangerous situation or possibly gate crash. So we'll see what happens, right? But I will do a little demonstration once we get past KVP7 and get into our nullsec systems. All right. So anything specific that you should kind of wonder or figure you should do? Well, generally as a new player coming into our nullsec space, you kind of want to make sure that you're not bringing everything with you. You don't want to pack all your stuff up, come out to DTOL and then try to give yourself a shot at like trying to move billions ISK to DTOL or from DTOL to H9, right? That is without doing this kind of best practices. People have done that in the past, or they have their hauler. They think, oh yeah, whatever, it's one single jump. What's the problem? How's that? It's not going to hurt me. It's likely going to be clear. It's likely going to be whatever. And then you unfortunately come into a situation where Minmatar Fleet Alliance is station bashing or attacking the Ansiplex jump gate, and all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, or they're gate camping the gate in from DTOL. And when you don't check and you're bringing billions of ISK out to get yourself situated, that's a problem, right? So you want to be careful. You can see here, I see immediately Trade Hub Camper and a criminal. There's a criminal status. He just did something, and he has a hauler that's a suspect. So he's very likely gate camping right now. I'm looking on grid. I don't see anyone on grid specifically, but you want to make sure that what you're doing is, you have plenty of time to kind of check out what's going on with your cloak timer. You can see, grid is almost immediately safe. There's no specific issue. So I'm going to go ahead and jump, and it should be fine. He's already done some crime. He's already suicide ganked and probably got killed. And his alt here, this suspect has probably taken, some loot from someone that wasn't paying attention or that wasn't, focusing, right? So you always got to keep your eyes out on these kinds of situations and see, okay, here's a situation where someone unfortunately got killed. They didn't see what was going on, right? So it wasn't me today. And under these circumstances, what I would have done differently is instead of, potentially jumping directly to the gate, I would have jumped to a station and docked up. Or if they were specifically focusing me, and I knew that they were going to focus me, they were sitting on the gate waiting, I would have crashed back to gate. And I can demonstrate that at the end of this video, what to do or how to do that stuff. Or if we run into a bubble, I'll also demonstrate it there. But next system, there's only one guy that just jumped through, nothing going on. Seems pretty quiet. I'll just go on to the next system. And you can see again, I'm just constantly looking around, constantly checking. There's not really any activity specifically in my route going to H9, so seems to be okay. Seems to be pretty quiet. I'm going to check all of my intel options. Seems like the guy that was in KBB7 was killed, so that's great. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to my alt and check out how KBB7 itself is looking. Looks like it's totally fine. Again, very clear. Just allies, just friendlies in system. No one's on grid doing anything specific. So, everything's looking good so far. Another thing you can consider, and this is something that I would definitely do more often with just a single Ishtar. It's not so much of an important concept, but let's say you're bringing out a very blingy ship to take care of escalations, or let's say you're bringing out something that, like a Marauder to do ratting. That stuff can really kind of mess you up, and that is a big target, right? So what you can do is you can do a travel fit. Now this is not a travel fit at all. This is just kind of, my bare bones fit that I will refit when I get back into H9 for ratting. But you can completely adjust this, put all these modules in your inventory, and from there, set this shit up to have like really, really good navigation, a really good align time, put on, your inertia stabilizers, all those different modules that help you warp really fast and reduce your alignment time. It's called putting or making a travel fit, and I would heavily recommend you do that for different ships depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to bring a big or slow ship out there, always do that. Add a cloak on there, use the micro warp drive jump cloak trick, do all these different things to help your ship be able to warp quicker than it normally would if you just had your whatever fit you are using its purpose for. So travel fits are very useful. If you want me to make a video on travel fits and kind of show the specific fitting that I would do for certain ships, or kind of the base modules that you need, I can always make a video. Just let me know in the comments or directly if you see me in game, and I would be happy to make another video on that stuff. All right. But today's a quiet day. People are doing whatever. No really major hostile activity. So thankfully, I have a pretty easygoing trip to Detol so far. All right. So there's a lot of neutrals in here. This is not really a known gate camping location, but you can see a lot of people just jumped out. So I'm going to wait until they all kind of, clear the grid, make sure that there's no one here immediately. This guy's 500 kilometers away in an Atron, so I think I'm fine. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and take that opportunity to warp as quickly as I can. You can see some people just jumped gate in system, so at this point, they don't have the reaction time to catch me or stop me, so it's good to wait a while until the grid is clear before you make your jump or make your move and decloak, right? And I'm just going to go ahead and set up some of my stuff to be more efficient. So yeah, and let me go back to my alt, see what's going on. If there's any changes at KBP, again, looks very calm, very clear, nothing on grid, only allies, so I'm all set there. All right. So once I get into Detol, I would say it's really good practice from here to warp to one of our friendly stations and double check the situation. Now I just did that, right? But I'm gonna, for the sake of it, warp to 0 on one of our AO stations, and this is again where I would go into my corp channel, ask is KBP7 clear, or I would go into a Discord and be like, hey guys, when you don't have an alt, right, you go into Discord, hey guys, I could really use a scout. I'm bringing something expensive into H9 from Detol. Anyone willing to escort me? Most of the time, if the people are actually active, they'd be happy to, check that stuff out and escort you out system by system, right? So, but since I have an alt, since I just checked KBB7, I'm going to go ahead and take that opportunity. And just to be extra safe, I'm going to check one more time. So I look back in KBB7, still looks clear to me, still no issue. I should be ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and warp to KBP7 gate and just go through. Like everything I'm seeing is looking good. You can see Guillaume, he said not there at all. No worries. I appreciate it. But if you don't have a situation where you have an alt seeing what's going on, and if you don't have a situation where you can, get eyes, wait in Detol. Do not bring your stuff in. Only go if you can absolutely guarantee that nothing's going on in KVP7. If you take that chance, there's eventually going to be a situation where there's a gate camp or there's enemies, and they are going to kill your stuff. So from here, I'm in KVP7. It's very clear. Nothing is going on. So I'm going to warp to station. I'm not going to warp straight to the gate. I'm going to warp to the station and set myself up to escort myself from system to system. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my alt at this point, and I'm going to warp from here, take the jump gate. And this is something to heavily consider, right? And this is also a setting that you should look into. So if you go to settings, you go to your EveCom, go to settings, there will be a gameplay option here that you should set yourself up to have automatic payments. Actually, it's not here. It's I think based on the actual jump gate settings. What you can do is, oftentimes people don't realize this, but when you have your jump gate things like established and you already set it up, it's mindless. You can just jump through. But people sometimes get caught up on a jump gate because they don't have the acceptable ISK limits to jump through without a warning. So you can see here, I'm looking at the jump gate. There's a services option, and it shows jump gate access and a certain amount of ISK. In this case, it doesn't cost anything, but sometimes they do cost something. So when you are jumping through nullsec systems and you need to, use jump gates, if there's a specific cost of ISK that you don't have an automatic profile to auto pay, it's going to give you a little pop-up message saying, are you sure you want to pay this amount of money to jump through? Well, if you're not paying attention, or if you're not, focusing 100%, you'll sit there. You'll sit on gate, not moving for who knows how long if you're not paying attention, right? And then you become a really easy target. So you want to set yourself up to have those auto pay features up to a certain amount of ISK so that you can jump through each gate without stopping, without that little warning button that you need to press OK on, and without anything disrupting your ability to jump through. All right. So what you can do, I think it's in Wallet. You go to your wallet and you go to automatic pay. So here, automatic pay, activate jump gate, you check that off and set a certain amount of ISK. Now, depending on the jump gate, they may cost more or less. It's always good to go to each jump gate that you're going to be using, see their minimum ISK total, and kind of give yourself a good leeway so that when you are jumping through, it'll automatically pay anything below this amount. Anything above this amount, it's preventing you from, getting scammed, because sometimes certain alliances or corporations will set their jump gate to be like 5 million to jump through. And it's like, one, that's scum behavior, right? But two, you want to limit it to the extent that it's slightly over the normal cost, nothing too crazy, right? So you want to check this off. You want to give the proper ISK amount that's well above the cost of the jump gate, but not so high that it's like you're freely giving away millions of ISK where people are trying to scam you, right? So you press apply, and you do this for all your characters when you come through, okay? I'm going to, in fact, double check and make sure that my other alt, Poyo, is good on that as well. So let me go to Poyo, and I'm going to, again, check my wallet. Go to my individual, go to automatic pay, activate jump gate is checked off for 5 million. Like, see, this is kind of bad practice. I'd probably change this down to 100,000 because it shouldn't be more expensive than that. And I don't want to just be wasting 5 million if someone set up a jump gate incorrectly. So now that I've checked off all the things that I need to check off, I'm going to go ahead and continue. And at this point, I'm going to be jumping and escorting myself with my alt. So I'm going to use him first, go and activate the gate. And I'm just in a capsule, so it's nothing, even if he gets gate camped and killed, I'm not losing anything. But it lets me know there's a gate camp happening in that specific system, and that I shouldn't bring my actually expensive ship in, right? And this is going to bring me straight in from, a jump bridge, which is super useful. It's going to be jumping me from where I was KVP7 here all the way down to here. I skipped a lot of steps. I jumped to GA. So now I've shortened my distance considerably. And now that I'm in system with my alt, I can see I'm the only one in system. It's relatively safe. There shouldn't be any problems, right? So I'm going to go ahead and warp to the next location. And while that's going on, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my main, my guy with the expensive ship, right? Because it looks clear in here. I can see very specifically that the system is empty, no enemies. I have a very safe chance to get in. Right? And this is just what you're going to do. You're going to escort yourself or have an ally escort you. And in Discord, they can say, they can say, hey, next system's clear, feel free to jump. And you just trust their word, obviously. Generally anyone who's escorting you will be trustworthy and will give you a good indication of what's the situation, right? So now that I'm in the next system, I'm going to keep my cloak timer. I'm going to jump through and see what's going on in the next location. This is not correct. Let me cancel that and go on to the next place, which is UL718. Make sure your alts and everything is set up in the same way so that you're not accidentally jumping them in the improper location, right? So I'm going to go to UL718 and check that out. And I still have about 15 seconds on my jump cloak on my other ship, so I got a little bit of time. So I just jumped into UL. No one's in here, so I can go ahead and jump with my other ship. And I just lost my timer, so let me go ahead and select that and move on. And I'm just going back and forth, you know. I'm on the only one in UL, so at this point I'm going to set my alt and go to the next place, which is the jump gate from UL to 6 Tech O. And you can see a single person jumped into system that's an ally. So I'm still very safe. Don't expect anything should happen in this situation. And I'm going to go ahead and jump to 0 on the jump gate for my alt and wait. I'm not going to jump immediately. I'm going to make sure I check the next system first, make sure it's all clear, and then once it is, I will activate the jump gate with my expensive ship, right? So let's jump on through, see what's going on. And I paid the amount, it was only 8,500, so well below your limit, right? Now I'm in 6 Tech O, only friendlies here, seems good. I'm going to go ahead and activate it on my other account, right? So he's jumping through. From there, I'm going to take my alt and warp to S9X, and you just keep going. And keep in mind, for certain situations, you do have things like this, where you have storms. It prevents you from cloaking. So if you're in a particularly expensive ship or fragile ship that you have a cloak on, you need to keep an eye on the system conditions. This is going to prevent you from cloaking up, so you have to be extra careful, right? So now I'm in the other system on my main. I'm going to wait, and this is a good opportunity when you do have some time, or you need to take a second while your alt is going to the next system to warp to a safe. So I'm going to go ahead and warp to a location or a station, right? Somewhere that will keep you safe in the meantime while your alt is doing its thing, right? So I'm just going to warp to a station, make sure that everything is good there, and you can see, oh, in GA9 we have a hot dropper. So we also have a well-known Proteus in X6, which is very close to the station. So this may be a good opportunity to wait, dock up, give it some time, let them clear out, or to make extra sure as you're traveling that you don't run into any problems, right? So this guy's going to station. I'm going to go ahead and check on Boyo, see what's going on in S9X. It's only friendlies here, so that's good. I'm going to go ahead and warp to 0 on the TU gate, and while that's happening, I'm going to switch back to Boyo and take the jump into S9X. And the whole time, I'm checking my alt, Boyo, and seeing the activity in the next system. So I see in S9X, it's only friendlies, it's only friendlies, it's only friendlies. I'm keeping eyes, I'm watching constantly, making sure that as I'm about to jump into system, there's no sudden appearance of enemies here, right? Because, you know, there's a small transition where all of a sudden you're setting yourself up to warp into a new system, and then all of a sudden 5 newts could jump into system from somewhere, and you never know where you could get caught, right? And even then, this is very, very close by. This is a very close system with 3 newts, so you want to be extra careful when you're kind of taking these transitions and watch the next system ahead of you very closely. And now that I jumped into system, I'm going to jump into TU and see what's going on in that system, right? So you can see TU here is empty, so I'm going to go ahead and set my main with the Ishtar to go straight through to TU, and from here I'm going to warp to 0 on AY gate. And still transiting from S9X, I'm keeping an eye on, you know, the system in TU, making sure no one just jumped in, because if they likely did just jump in, they're coming from AY, and they could potentially see me come into the system, sit here, and try to catch me. So, okay, so I just jumped into system. Now I'm going to take the gate to AY. Check it out. So we have only allies in fleet, so we should be all set. I'm going to set Poyo to go to AY. And from here, again, you just keep escorting yourself, or having a friendly escort you system by system, telling you it's all clear. Okay? And someone just killed Andrew, who was in GA9. So excellent. That neutral that I was worried about is no longer there, right? So that's even more of an indication that we're all clear and that we have a safe passage. So I'm here in AY. Looks good. I'm going to jump into 2V, see what's going on in there. Looks clear as day, only friendlies. So we are all set. Going to make the next jump towards H9. And from there, I'm going to jump my main to 2B. And something to keep in mind, should have done this before. Now that I'm in nullsec, I should fleet up, make sure that in case I do get caught, my allies can jump to me. So I'm going to go ahead and find Providence standing fleet right here, join fleet, and make sure that everyone is fleeted up. So here, all of a sudden, 2V, there's a neutral I see on Intel. Let me check out what's going on in there. So I go to Boyo, I'm looking, I don't see anyone here. Check their info, the initiative. So I got to be extra careful. So I just jump through without seeing what's going on. Here is where I'm going to take advantage of my gate cloak and see the situation. So you can see there's a Viator here. I'm going to report this, and they're just jumping through, right? So I'm going to stay cloaked while they do that, and report an intel. And now that they're gone, now that there's no snoots, I'm going to go ahead and uncloak and move on, right? So it's definitely not a bad thing to hold your cloak to make sure that you are safe before doing anything else. And then from here, I'm checking H9. H9 is fully clear. I'm going to warp to my my station, home base, and make sure things are good over here. Looks like there was a little fight here with some frigates, so yeah, we missed out on a little bit of action, but we're coming through safely with what we needed to do. We achieved our goal, right? So my escort successfully escorted me. He's docking up. I'm going to finally make sure that my main ship can come into system and jump into H9 Fortizar safe and sound. Right, so go ahead and hit the dock button, and that's kind of it, right? That's kind of how you set your stuff up to get out here safely. With an escort, if you followed all the proper procedures to make sure it went smoothly, you checked your intel to make sure that nothing of significance was blocking your way, and even when there was an enemy or a potential enemy in system, you use your jump gate cloak timer to kind of ensure that the grid is safe, or wait until an ideal situation is there to let you jump to safety, right? So that's kind of it. I'm going to do one more small demonstration, and that'll be the end of this video. It's just going to be, what happens in the case that you run into a bubble gate camp, what happens when there is a lot more activity going on and it's not as safe of a trip that it was for me this time, and where you should potentially, consider your options, right? So I'm just going to jump, I rat in a different system, so I'm just going to head towards that system, right? So I'm going to jump to GA9, and that's where there was recent activity, right? So I'm going to warp there, and I'm just going to demonstrate what happens. Let's say there was a gate camp in system that I wasn't aware of on the gate that I'm coming from H9. So there's a bubble there, there's potentially enemies. You want to kind of gauge your situation and see what's the best course of action in case that there is something set up that you weren't accounting for, right? Now, if I was using an escort to get me all the way out there and I jumped in with my capsule, it's just a capsule. They could kill it, but I wouldn't be jumping in my main guy. But let's say for the sake of it, I figured it was all fine, there was nothing going on, and that we had a gate camp here that I needed to worry about. So I jump in, and this is where you really take advantage of your jump cloak timer. So you look around on grid, you see what's going on around the gate. Theoretically, nothing is happening here, obviously, because it's a clear gate, but let's say for the sake of it, there was a big bubble here, and I was prevented from warping, right? And let's say there was a bunch of enemies here that were sitting and waiting. Well, they just saw someone jump in, they're getting ready to target you and kill you, so what are your options? Well, generally, this kind of ship, I have only I have 20 seconds to decide. I have a 5-second align time what I can do is I can kind of get a sense of where my ship is facing, and it's facing in this direction. So you can pick something here to right click and warp to, and because I'm already aligned in that direction, it potentially will save me some time. But let's say they have an insta cloaker or locker. Well, this is where you should gate crash. So I have no more seconds. I'm going to approach and jump and turn on my prop mod. I'm going to turn on everything else, and this is the point where they target me, start to try to kill me, and I'm just going to burn as quickly as I can to H9 gate and hope that I survive long enough to actually jump back through, because once they aggress me, if they're attacking me and killing me right now, and I make it to the gate and am able to jump through, they can't follow me through because they have a combat timer. So this is where you can gate crash is what it's called, and go back into the other system and warp to a safe place right away so that no one can follow you through. So I'd warp straight to station, warp to 0, and hope that, by the time that they jump back through this gate, if there was anyone that didn't aggress me, they would jump through this gate and try to track me down. But at the point that they do that, I'm already hopefully warping away to safety, right? So that is a very, very useful strategy. You should try to set up your travel fits to allow you some tank so that you can do this, and make sure you have as large of a prop mod on it to make you move fast. Obviously, MWDs are much better than afterburners in this situation. So you want to hit your MWD, burn back to gate as quickly as possible, and obviously the faster your ship is, the quicker you'll get back to gate and the more likely you're going to survive, right? This is kind of like a judgment-based situation. If you're in a situation where you're outside of the warp bubble, like the disrupt bubble that they've set up, and you can try and get, let's say they're over 23 kilometers away based on the randomization of where you jumped into system. So you're not in the warp bubble, you're over 23 kilometers away. You can take advantage of the direction that your ship is facing while cloaked and take a chance. And this is where you could use a warp core stabilizer. This is where you could use an interdiction nullifier, all those kinds of things, all those modules that can help you get out of that situation, that I'll likely demonstrate in another video in the future, right? So here I jump in, let's say I'm outside of that bubble, they are more than 25 kilometers away from me. Well, I can choose to warp to something that is within the alignment of my ship, and I'll choose this planet, warp to 100, and you can see I'm already kind of facing that direction, so all I need to do is get up to 45 or 75%, and by the time I get there, I'm already warped out. So I just went from cloak to warp pretty damn quickly because I chose something that was in alignment of my ship. And that, unless they're an insta-locking situation, they may not have been able to react quickly in time to catch me and lock me down by the time I started warping. So it's a good strategy when you're in a really tight situation and you don't know what to do, is to look where your ship's already pre-aligned when cloaked and try to warp to something that is in that alignment, because it saves one of the two steps to ensure that you warp out, right? But from there, I'm just going to continue to my final destination and go ahead and dock up. Another thing you can do, in fact, I'll just demonstrate one more time before I get there. Another thing you can do, if you do see that there are neutrals in system and they're not on your gate on grid, where from the gate that you jump in, they may have a drag bubble or a bubble gate camp set up at another gate. So what you want to do is you never want to jump gate from gate. Anytime you see neutrals in your local system, you should never, ever, ever jump from gate to gate. So if they had a bubble on the other gate and I just jumped straight to the gate, I'd be caught in that bubble. I'd be caught some distance away from the gate. I would not be able to warp to 0, and they would catch me, lock me down, and kill me. So whenever you see neutrals in system, never ever jump from gate to gate. Instead, use your tacticals. So I can see, okay, I want to jump to GA9 and I want to check that the gate is clear, right? So, or I want not GA9, HP, let's say. So I'm going to use these tacticals here, HP 200 kilometers, and warp there instead, because how gate camps and bubbles work is they prevent you from warping through the specific trajectory that you move. So what people tend to do is they warp to and from different gates in a straight line, and once they get to the location that they want to set up a gate camp, they put a bubble in that very specific trajectory so that when people do jump gate to gate, they get caught in that bubble. Well, if you're jumping to a location that is slightly off of center, from the gate. It's not in the same line as where the bubble is. So you can warp to the grid, you can see the bubble is right here, that is set up to jump from gate to gate, but you're 200 kilometers away, seeing the situation on grid to make sure that gate camp isn't there, right? And from here, I can see there's no gate camp. I could warp to this system. I can jump to the gate, warp to 0, and jump in. But sometimes if there's neutrals, they may have a bubble gate camp set up here that would catch you if you jumped gate to gate. Well, I warped here. I saw that they're there. I'm going to go ahead and warp to station and make sure that they can't catch me, or I could come in from a different time zone, or jump to a different system that they're not gate camping the gate at, and then go around, or just wait them out, wait for them to get bored, dissipate the gate camp, and come back later, right? So you should always, anytime there is neutrals in system, do not jump from gate to gate. Use your tacticals, warp to a station first, warp to a safe first. Never ever follow the same trajectory from one gate to another, because that is almost always where they have a bubble set up to catch you from going that trajectory. Okay? So that is basically it. That was the video. If there's anything I missed, feel free to let me know. Feel free to provide input in the comments or to me directly, and I'll add it to another video in the future. But that is the overall system and method on how to travel safely from HiSec to our nullsec space, and everything you need to do to check and make sure that there's no enemies in the way. There's nothing that you're dealing with on grid that could potentially kill you. The strategies to avoid those kinds of situations, like gate crashing if you're in a bubble, or warping somewhere else first, warping to a safe, warping to a station, warping to a tactical couple 100 kilometers away from the gate to check the grid, and then warping to the gate. And it's just the overall best practices to keep yourself safe, keep your ship alive, and make sure that the thing that you just purchased here doesn't get immediately killed, right? So thanks for watching the video. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I guess I'll see you next time. Thanks.